Shame rarely announces itself. It enters quietly, like a shadow learning the shape of a room. It does not shout, it lowers the eyes, it tightens the throat. It teaches the body how to disappear without leaving. Long before words form, shame speaks through posture, silence, and hesitation. A pause held too long, a laugh that arrives late, a story never finished. Most people carry it without knowing its name. They mistake it for shyness, humility, or discipline. But shame is older than thought. It is learned before language, stored in muscle memory and breath. This is not the shame of wrongdoing. This is the shame of being seen. And once learned, it becomes fluent, communicating without sound, shaping identity without consent, and convincing the nervous system that safety lives in hiding. There is a moment when silence stops being neutral. It begins to carry weight. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind, the kind that presses inward, the kind that makes the body smaller without asking permission. This is often how shame first reveals itself, not as a feeling that can be named, but as a shift, a subtle withdrawal from the world, a hesitation before speaking, a careful editing of thoughts before they ever reach the mouth. Shame does not arrive with clarity. It arrives disguised as caution, as politeness, as maturity. It convinces people that staying quiet is wisdom, that shrinking is safety, that disappearing slightly is a form of control. The body learns this language early. Shoulders curve inward, eye contact softens, then breaks. Breath becomes shallow, as if even air must be earned. Nothing dramatic happens. That is the nature of it. Shame grows in ordinary moments. A sentence interrupted, a laugh met with silence, a look that lingers too long. The nervous system records these moments without commentary, storing them as lessons. Be careful, be smaller, be less visible, and so silence begins to speak. It speaks in the way someone apologizes before taking up space, in the way they explain themselves too much, in the way they sense rejection before it arrives. Often, people do not realize they are carrying shame. They simply believe something about themselves feels off. That confidence belongs to others. That ease is for people who were built differently. Shame makes itself invisible by becoming familiar. It feels like personality, like temperament, like truth. There is a particular loneliness to this stage, not because others are absent, but because connection feels conditional. As though belonging must be earned through perfection, silence, or usefulness. As though being fully seen would cost too much. So the voice softens. Opinions stay unspoken. Needs are delayed indefinitely. Not out of weakness, but out of adaptation. Shame teaches the nervous system that visibility is dangerous. That attention precedes harm. That safety lives in blending into the background. And the body listens because the body always listens first. This is why shame is so difficult to detect. It does not feel like pain. It feels like restraint. Like holding something fragile and never setting it down. Like constantly monitoring the self for errors that might invite rejection. People often describe it as a sense of being fundamentally flawed, without knowing where that belief began. As if something essential was missed in their making. As if confidence, ease, or self-trust were distributed unevenly, and they simply received less. But shame does not come from truth, it comes from interruption. Interrupted expression, interrupted safety, interrupted acceptance. At this stage, shame has not yet formed words. It exists as atmosphere, as tone, as an unspoken agreement between the body and the world. I will stay quiet, you will not hurt me. And so the silence continues. It fills conversations with pauses. It fills rooms with absence. It fills lives with untaken chances that never feel like choices. Yet even here, something remains intact. Beneath the restraint, beneath the silence, there is awareness beginning to stir. A faint noticing that this quiet is not neutral, that it costs something, that it asks too much. This noticing is not rebellion. It is not confidence. It is simply recognition. A moment when the body senses that the silence it learned was once protective, but may no longer be necessary. Not yet a solution, not yet a change, just a gentle realization. Something has been holding the voice back, and that something has a name. Shame does not start loud. It starts by teaching silence how to speak. Shame is not born in isolation. It is learned in relationship. Long before a person can explain themselves, before memory becomes narrative, the nervous system is already studying the world. It watches faces. It listens to tone. It learns what is welcomed and what must be hidden. Shame begins here, not as a belief, but as a response. A child reaches outward with emotion, curiosity, need. Sometimes that reach is met with warmth. Sometimes it is met with absence. And sometimes it is met with correction so sharp it teaches the body to retreat. The lesson is rarely spoken. It arrives through subtle cues. A sigh instead of a response. A look of disappointment that lasts a second too long. Affection that feels conditional, present when performance is good, withdrawn when it is not. The child does not interpret these moments as circumstantial. They interpret them as personal. The developing mind does not think something went wrong. It thinks, I am wrong. This is how shame takes root, not through cruelty alone, but through inconsistency, through emotional unpredictability, through love that feels earned rather than given. In many cases, no one intended harm. Caregivers were doing the best they could with what they had. But the nervous system does not track intention, it tracks impact. It remembers how safety felt and how quickly it could disappear. Shame often grows in environments where emotions are inconvenient. Where anger is punished, sadness is minimized, joy is controlled, and vulnerability is met with discomfort. In these spaces, expression becomes a risk. So the child adapts. They learn to read the room before speaking. They learn to suppress needs that feel burdensome. They learn to become what is required in order to stay connected. Over time, this adaptation solidifies into identity. The careful one, the quiet one, the easy one, the strong one who does not ask. Each role is a strategy. Each strategy is a form of protection. Shame does not say you are bad. It says, be careful being yourself. And because it forms so early, it often goes unquestioned. It becomes the lens through which the world is interpreted. Praise feels undeserved. Criticism feels confirming. Neutral interactions feel loaded with risk. Even outside childhood, shame continues to be reinforced through cultural expectations, through comparison, through systems that reward productivity over presence, perfection over authenticity, through environments where worth is measured, ranked, and displayed. Social rejection does not need to be explicit, it only needs to be perceived. The brain fills in the rest. This is why shame can exist even in success, even in love, even in admiration, because its origin was never about performance, it was about belonging. The nervous system learned that connection could be withdrawn, that acceptance had conditions, that visibility carried consequences. And so shame becomes internalized authority. It no longer needs external reinforcement. It monitors from within, anticipating disapproval before it happens. It edits expression. It tightens the body. It keeps the self contained. What began as an adaptation becomes a belief that says, there is something about me that needs managing. Yet shame is not proof of defect. It is evidence of sensitivity, of attunement, of a system that learned to survive by staying alert. At its core, shame is a record of unmet safety, a map of where connection felt fragile, a memory of moments when being fully oneself felt like too much. Understanding this does not erase shame, but it changes the relationship to it. It reveals shame not as a personal failure, but as a learned language, a dialect of survival passed down through experiences that required self-restraint. And once this is seen, something softens. The question shifts from what is wrong with me to what did I have to learn to stay connected? Shame answers quietly. It learned silence. It learned caution. It learned how to belong by becoming smaller. Shame does not live in thought alone. It lives in the body's circuitry. Long before the mind forms language, the brain is already deciding what is safe. And when shame is present, the brain treats visibility as threat. Not imagined threat, remembered threat. The kind that once required retreat to preserve connection. Neurologically, shame activates the same systems associated with danger. The amygdala, the brain's alarm center, becomes alert. The body prepares not to fight, not to flee, but to collapse inward, to freeze, to disappear just enough to avoid notice. This is why shame feels paralyzing, why words vanish mid-sentence, why eye contact becomes difficult, why the body grows heavy, slow, muted. Shame signals the nervous system that exposure equals risk. When this happens, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning, language, and perspective, loses access. Logic fades. Self-compassion becomes unreachable. The body takes over, defaulting to learned responses that once preserved safety. This is not weakness. It is biology doing its job. Shame narrows perception. It collapses time. Past experiences bleed into the present, convincing the system that what once hurt could happen again now. The body responds accordingly, even when the mind knows better. This is why reassurance rarely works. Shame is not persuaded by evidence. It is shaped by sensation, by tone, by micro-expressions, by the absence of threat more than the presence of logic. Under shame, the brain prioritizes connection over authenticity. Belonging becomes the highest value. And if belonging once required self-erasure, the brain will repeat that pattern automatically. The brain does not ask if the cost is high. It asks if the risk is survivable. Shame also distorts self-perception. Neuroimaging studies show that shame activates areas of the brain associated with self-referential processing. Attention turns inward, looping relentlessly. Every gesture is scrutinized. Every word is replayed. The self becomes the problem to be solved. This inward collapse explains why shame feels isolating even in company. The world recedes. The body remains present, but the mind withdraws into internal surveillance. Connection feels distant, unreachable, even when others are near. Language, too, is affected. Shame reduces verbal fluency. The throat tightens. Sentences shorten. Thoughts fragment. What cannot be expressed remains trapped inside the nervous system, reinforcing the sense of being unseen and misunderstood. Over time, repeated shame responses strengthen neural pathways. The brain becomes efficient at self-censorship. Silence becomes automatic. Avoidance feels natural. The system no longer waits for danger, it anticipates it. This is how shame becomes self-sustaining. The brain learns to expect rejection, the body prepares accordingly. The behavior then confirms the belief, a closed loop. And yet, within this loop, something important is often missed. Shame is not evidence of truth. It is evidence of memory. The brain is not responding to who the person is, it is responding to what once happened. Shame says this is dangerous. But what it often means is this once was. Understanding this distinction changes everything, because the brain can learn new associations. Neural pathways are not fixed. They are shaped by repetition, by safety, by experiences that contradict old predictions. Shame quiets not when it is argued with, but when the nervous system senses that exposure no longer leads to harm, when expression is met with attunement instead of withdrawal, when presence is not punished. The brain under shame is not broken, it is overprotective. It learned its role well. And when that is seen, not intellectually, but somatically, another possibility emerges, the idea that the body might be allowed to stay. That visibility might not require collapse. That silence might no longer be the only language of safety. This realization does not erase shame, but it loosens its grip, because the brain, once it feels safe enough, can begin to listen for a different signal. One that says, you are still here, and nothing is being taken away. Shame does not only silence, it negotiates. It creates an ongoing tension between two opposing needs, the need to be seen and the need to stay safe. This conflict lives quietly inside, shaping behavior long before it reaches awareness. On one side, there is longing, the pull toward connection, expression, authenticity, the desire to speak freely, to be known without explanation, to exist without constant self-monitoring. On the other, there is memory, the body's recollection of what visibility once cost, the tightening that follows attention, the instinct to retreat before something can be taken away. This is the push and pull of shame. It rarely shows itself as fear alone. More often, it disguises itself as control, perfectionism, people-pleasing, emotional distance. These are not character flaws. They are compromises, ways of staying connected without being exposed. Perfectionism promises safety through flawlessness. If nothing is wrong, nothing can be rejected. The bar moves higher, not for achievement, but for protection. Rest feels dangerous. Mistakes feel catastrophic. The self becomes a project that must be managed at all times. People-pleasing operates differently. It studies others closely, adjusting tone, opinion, and presence to maintain harmony. Needs are postponed. Boundaries blur. The nervous system believes that attunement to others will prevent abandonment. Emotional withdrawal offers another form of safety. Distance becomes armor. If connection is limited, loss cannot reach as deeply. Intimacy feels exposing. Independence feels safer even when it feels lonely. All of these responses serve the same purpose: minimize risk by minimizing visibility. Shame teaches that being fully oneself is unsafe. So the self is edited, curated, presented in pieces rather than whole. The world sees a version, but not the core. This is not deception, it is survival. The tragedy is that these strategies often create the very isolation they are meant to prevent. Perfection invites pressure, not closeness. People-pleasing attracts dependence, not mutuality. Withdrawal reduces harm, but also reduces connection. And so the conflict deepens. The need to be seen grows stronger. The fear of being seen grows sharper. Inside, there is a constant calculation. Is it safe to speak? Is it worth the risk? Will this cost me something I cannot afford to lose? The body answers before the mind can decide. The throat tightens. The word truth is delayed. Shame thrives in this hesitation. It convinces the system that restraint equals intelligence. That silence equals self-control. That desire equals danger. Yet beneath these adaptations, something resists. A quiet frustration, a sense of living behind glass, a feeling of being known only partially. This resistance is not defiance, it is grief. Grief for the parts of the self that learned to hide. Grief for the voice that learned to wait. Grief for the ease that was never allowed to develop. The push to hide is powerful because it once worked. It reduced harm. It preserved attachment. It kept the nervous system intact when safety was uncertain. But time changes context. What was necessary then may be constricting now. The challenge is that shame does not update easily. It does not recognize growth, distance, or new environments. It carries the past into every present moment, insisting on the same protections long after the danger has passed. This is why people often feel trapped in patterns they outgrew. They know cognitively that they are safe, but their body has not been convinced. And so the hiding continues. Not because the person is unwilling to change, but because the nervous system is still negotiating survival. Understanding this reframes the struggle. It shifts the focus from self-criticism to curiosity. From why am I like this, to what is this protecting me from? Shame does not need to be confronted. It needs to be understood, because beneath the hiding is not weakness, but an intelligence that learned how to endure. And that intelligence, once met with patience rather than pressure, begins to loosen its grip, not by force, but by safety. Recognition does not arrive loudly, it does not announce itself as change. It appears quietly in the space between reaction and response, in a pause that feels slightly longer than usual. In a moment when the body notices its own tightening and does not immediately obey it, this is the turning point of shame, not its disappearance, but its visibility. For the first time, the silence is seen not as personality. The hesitation is recognized not as truth, but as protection. What once felt automatic becomes observable. There is no rush here, no demand to speak, no insistence on courage, just awareness. The nervous system begins to sense that the threat may not be present, or that even if it is, collapse is not the only option. This sensing is subtle, fragile, easy to miss, but it matters. Recognition often comes through contrast, a moment of being met without judgment, a conversation where expression is received instead of corrected, a presence that does not withdraw when vulnerability appears. The body registers this before the mind does. Something relaxes, breath deepens slightly, the shoulders lower without instruction. And in that moment, a quiet question arises, not consciously, but somatically. Is this allowed? Shame has always answered quickly no. But now, the answer hesitates. This hesitation is not resistance, it is curiosity, the beginning of a different relationship with the self. One that does not require immediate self-editing. Recognition also emerges through fatigue, the exhaustion of constant monitoring, the realization that silence, while once protective, has become costly. This is not rebellion, it is honesty, a seeing of the toll shame has taken, not dramatically, but steadily. Missed connections, unspoken truths, a life lived slightly off-center. And with that seeing comes compassion. Not the kind that excuses everything, but the kind that understands why things are the way they are. The kind that recognizes adaptation without shame about shame. Recognition reframes the narrative. What once felt like failure is seen as intelligence. What once felt like weakness is seen as sensitivity. What once felt fixed is seen as learned. This shift does not demand change, it invites possibility. The body, once alerted to danger everywhere, begins to notice moments of neutrality, of safety, of presence that does not require performance. These moments do not erase the past, but they introduce contrast. And contrast is how the nervous system learns. Shame depends on certainty, on the belief that exposure always leads to harm. Recognition introduces doubt into that certainty, not as denial, but as nuance. Sometimes it is safe, sometimes it is not, and the difference can be felt. This discernment is new. It requires patience. It unfolds slowly, but it marks a fundamental shift from automatic hiding to conscious choice. Choice does not mean constant expression. It means permission. The permission to stay present even when discomfort arises. The permission to notice the urge to disappear without immediately obeying it. In this space, something important happens. The self stops being the enemy. The inner voice softens, not because shame is gone, but because it is no longer mistaken for truth. It is seen as a message from an earlier time, one that can be listened to without being followed. Recognition does not end shame. It ends the confusion. It allows shame to be placed in context, to be understood as a response, not an identity, a memory, not a destiny. And once that distinction is made, the nervous system begins to relax its grip, slowly, carefully, on its own terms. The silence remains, but it is no longer absolute. Within it, something else can be heard. A quieter voice, one that has been waiting, one that does not demand to be loud, only to be allowed. Healing shame does not begin with confidence. It begins with safety. Not the kind that is declared or assumed, but the kind that is felt, gradually, inconsistently, and without force. The nervous system does not respond to intentions. It responds to experiences. And so relearning safety is not an event. It is a slow recalibration. The body has spent years associating visibility with threat. It cannot be convinced otherwise through logic alone. It must be shown repeatedly that presence does not lead to harm. That expression can be met with steadiness. That nothing is taken away when the self is revealed. This learning happens in small moments. A thought spoken without immediate regret. An emotion allowed without explanation. A boundary held without punishment. These moments may feel insignificant, but to a nervous system shaped by shame, they are profound. They challenge predictions that have long gone unquestioned. Safety is not the absence of discomfort. It is the presence of regulation, the ability to stay with sensation without collapse, to feel exposed without disintegrating. This is why healing often feels subtle rather than transformative. There are no dramatic breakthroughs, no permanent states, just a gradual expansion of tolerance. The body begins to stay present a few seconds longer, the voice steadies slightly sooner, the urge to hide passes more quickly. These are not failures when they reverse, they are signs of learning. Shame loosens when the nervous system experiences consistency, when kindness is not followed by withdrawal, when mistakes are not followed by abandonment, when silence is no longer the only safe option. Importantly, safety does not require perfection. It requires predictability, the assurance that the self will not be punished for being human. This is where compassion becomes biological, not an idea but a felt sense, a tone, a pacing. a way of being with the self that does not escalate threat. When the inner response to discomfort changes, the nervous system updates its map. It learns that internal exposure does not always result in internal attack. This is integration, not removing shame, but contextualizing it, allowing it to exist without giving it authority, listening to it as a signal rather than a command. Over time, the body begins to differentiate past from present. The reflex to disappear softens. The self feels less fragile. Expression no longer feels like a gamble every time. Importantly, this process is nonlinear. Old patterns resurface. Silence returns. The urge to hide reappears. This is not regression. It is memory being tested against new information. Each time the system chooses presence over collapse, even briefly, it gathers data. Each time nothing catastrophic follows expression, the brain updates its predictions. Slowly, the cost of hiding becomes clearer, and the cost of presence becomes more tolerable. Healing does not mean becoming loud, bold, or fearless. It means becoming available. Available to sensation, to truth, to connection that does not require self-erasure. In this space, identity shifts. The self is no longer organized around avoidance. It begins to organize around values, curiosity, and choice. Shame no longer defines the boundaries of existence. It becomes one voice among many, and in moments of exposure, when the old tightening returns, the body now has options. It can breathe, it can stay. It can remember that survival no longer depends on disappearance. This is what safety teaches. Not that nothing bad will happen, but that the self can remain intact when it does. And that knowledge changes everything. When shame softens, it does not vanish. It quiets. Its voice loses urgency. Its grip loosens. It no longer stands at the center of identity, directing every movement. It becomes something that can be noticed, then allowed to pass. What remains is not a new self. It is the old one, less burdened. There is more space in the body. The breath moves without being monitored. Posture adjusts naturally, not as performance but as relief. The nervous system no longer braces for impact in every interaction. Silence changes its meaning. It is no longer a place of hiding, but a place of rest. Words arrive when they are ready, not when they are forced. Expression becomes less about proving safety and more about sharing presence. When shame softens, attention turns outward again. The world regains texture. Faces are seen without immediate interpretation. Moments are experienced without constant self-reference. The mind spends less time circling the self and more time inhabiting the present. This is not confidence. It is permission. Permission to exist without constant correction. Permission to feel without immediate containment. Permission to take up space without justification. What emerges is gentleness toward the self, toward others, toward the unpolished parts that were once hidden away. Gentleness not as fragility, but as strength no longer hardened by defense. Shame once promised safety through restraint. Now safety arrives through presence. There is an understanding that belonging does not require perfection. That connection does not demand erasure. That being seen is not a transaction, but a shared risk and often a shared relief. The body remembers this. It remembers moments of being met, of staying visible and surviving, of speaking and not being abandoned. These memories begin to outweigh the old ones, not by force but by frequency. And in this remembering, identity settles, not as a declaration, but as a quiet alignment. The self no longer feels like something to manage. It feels like something to inhabit. Shame may still appear in moments of stress, in unfamiliar rooms, in old relational patterns. But it is recognized now, not as a warning of truth, but as an echo of a time when silence was necessary, when shrinking preserved connection, when hiding was the only way to stay. That time has passed, and while the body may still remember, it no longer has to obey. What remains is choice. The choice to speak or not speak without fear deciding first. The choice to stay present, even when discomfort arises. The choice to trust that being human is not a flaw. In the absence of constant self-surveillance, something simple emerges: ease. Not the ease of certainty, but the ease of acceptance. The kind that allows mistakes to exist without catastrophe. The kind that allows joy without suspicion. The kind that allows silence without shame. This is not an ending, it is a return to a self that was always there, waiting beneath layers of adaptation, beneath learned restraint, beneath a silence that once served a purpose. Now that silence rests, and in its place there is room to breathe, room to be seen, room to exist without apology. Shame no longer speaks for the self, and the self, finally, is free to speak or remain quiet on its own terms.